No matter your age, your plan for retirement can start today. From the News Channel 5 Network, this is the Retirement Report.
Good morning. Welcome to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. Going to be talking about some interesting things today. You know, we get into estate planning now and then, and that's going to be the main topic today. But there's some things I've run across too that I'm going to share with you. And this one was, it called about the what ifs of retirement. So imagine, you know, what if the market takes another downturn? Well, that's actually a question it should be saying when the market takes another downturn, because we know that's going to happen. We have a cyclical business environment, a cyclical economy, a cyclical stock market, meaning simply that these things happen, right? We're going to have another recession sometime, and typically the recessions and bear markets go together. And by definition, what people usually refer to as a bear market is that of a downturn of over 20%. Now, what we're going to be seeing, and there's some other things with regard to back-to-back quarters and that kind of stuff. So what I want you to be thinking of is this. What does your portfolio look like for that next downturn? And what if that, or what if, you know, when it does happen, what are you going to do? All right? Do you know, have you stress tested your current portfolio? Have you had the same portfolio over the last 20 years, for instance? So we've been through two bear markets in that period, downturns of almost 46% and 55% respectively. How did you fare during those times? And if you don't know, this would be a great time for you to find out. And I'll give an offer up a little later in the show for the first 10 callers to be able to, in fact, get an investment analysis of your portfolio where you can see how it would do. There are measures for that. We get Morningstar reports for you, and we can show you how your portfolio would perform in a bear market, as well as how it's done relative to the market over the last 10 years, the longest bull market in history. Okay? Now, that's one thing we're going to talk about. Another, what if you outlive your assets? And we're going to talk about two pieces to that. One of them, what if you outlive your assets, and what if you're unable to care for yourself, okay? So if you outlive your assets, one of the worst fears, right? It's one of the people have said that's a bigger fear than that of dying, is running out of money during their lifetime, and in their later years being stuck and not having the ability to take care of themselves properly and to enjoy life and not just survive retirement, but of course thrive in retirement, which is what we want. So if you outlive your assets, what that would look like, all right, we're going to talk about how, well, let me put it another way. We're not going to be talking about what if. We're going to talk about how to make sure that never happens. And then what happens if something happens to you? What if you can't take care of yourself? What kind of planning do you have in place? Because estate planning is not just about wills and trusts and things that deal with when you're gone, what happens. We want to talk about that too, but also what happens during periods of incapacity. So we're going to get into that today. And who's going to help me with that? My good friend and special guest, Russ Cook, with Russ Cook and Associates, is joining us today. Russ is a board-certified estate planning attorney. Russ Cook and Associates, his firm is over in Brentwood, Tennessee. I've known Russ now for over 15 years. We've worked together with clients, and you know, and this is the other part. I've been doing this for almost for 30, and Russ is, I think, a little longer than me in business. And so you get to see in that period like that, when 30 years ago, my clients then were retired. So many of them were in their 60s and 70s and some older. So obviously a lot of those have passed on. And I've got to see in working with Russ over these last 15 years where I've had clients that have passed that we've done work for and saw how that work in fact did exactly what it was intended to do to help the family, protect them and to make sure that the assets were dealt with in the way that was intended. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things this morning. Russ, this is one of those areas that I think the biggest thing is just people failing to plan. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we want to offer up, if you've haven't done an estate plan, if you've done one but it's something you haven't even looked at for the last 10, 15, 20 years or more, this would be a great time for you to get an assessment of that plan. So Russ has been kind enough, he's going to offer up as well. If you want to, in fact, we'll just get it out there now. If you're one of the first 10 callers to my office, 615-376-5325, we'll do up a free retirement income analysis. So this is, I was talking about the investment analysis part of it, stress testing your portfolio, seeing how it would do, not just in a bull market like this, where we've had the longest bull market in history over these last 10 years, but also how it would do in bear markets as well. And what that, in particular, if you're within 5 years of retirement, either before or after retirement, this can be a critical time for you in making sure another bear market could put you behind, could in fact put you at risk to run out of money during your lifetime. So, a little stress testing. Let's take a look and show your financial future based on the things you're doing today as a part of this analysis, because we're going to look at your income, both pre and post retirement, your expenses, your assets, your liabilities. We're going to add in for inflation, for taxes, rates of return. It's a very comprehensive analysis, and as a part of it, we'll get into estate planning as well. And Russ, as I said, has been he has offered to take a look at your estate planning documents. Again, free consultation, no charge for that, to see if there's anything lacking there, or if you've got questions, he can help with that as well. So, there's the number on your screen, 615-376-5325. Tessa's standing by. She'll get you information. She'll send you out a packet of things you'll need to bring to your appointment, such as your estate planning documents, right? With me, and when you come in to see me, I'll give you a free copy of my book, 7 Steps to Financial Freedom in Retirement. Chapter 7, by the way, Step 7, guess what it is? Yes, estate planning. And we're going to talk about the 5 essential documents that form the foundation of a good estate plan. All right, Russ, in fact, why don't we start with that? We haven't covered the basics in a while, and I know we've got some other things we want to touch on. And in fact, this will tie in as far as assets, how to choose the right people, but those 5 essential documents, let's talk about that. So those would be?
They would be the will, the power of attorney for health care, and the living will. And for those that want to avoid the probate process, there's the revocable living trust. The revocable living trust is a document in which you create a way of transferring assets at your death by not going through a probate process. That's where you create the trust, you make yourself the trustee, you're the beneficiary, you fund this trust with your assets, and then when you pass, the successor trustee takes over control of those assets without having to get appointed by the court or without having to file the trust with the probate court. Now again, sometimes folks will say, and I agree, Tennessee doesn't have a very onerous probate process, but a lot of folks like the idea of being able to transition assets out of their estate when they pass using the people that they trust and not have to go and hire an attorney and file a bunch of documents. That's how that helps. The will basically is a stand-in to say if there's anything left at your death that pours over into the trust. Power of attorney for financial matters allows you to appoint someone to make financial decisions in the event you cannot while you're living. Healthcare power of attorney allows you to appoint someone to make healthcare decisions for you in the event you cannot while you're living. And of course, the living will is a directive to the hospital, basically stating if your condition is terminal with no hope of recovery, then you would authorize them to take you off all the machines. There's also another document called an advance directive. It's very specific on the decisions you want made in certain circumstances. It's not for every client, but it's one that we offer up as well. It's a form provided by the state of Tennessee, so it's not really typed up in our system. It's just something we just pull off the internet and give the folks if they're interested in having that as well.
And this goes to one of the things we were looking at earlier, which is how to choose the right people. So now we're talking about a revocable living trust and the parties to a revocable living trust. So we're going to have the trustor, the person that's establishing this trust, setting it up. So for yourself, when you're looking at home, you're deciding which one. Maybe you have a trust now that you set up before. And I'm guessing if you do a revocable living trust, you're the trustee, of course, of that trust most likely as well. And then you're going to need to name, and you're the only one receiving benefits, so you're technically the beneficiary, but they're going to need to name a successor trustee. They're going to need to name an executor for the will. They're going to need to name power of attorney. So let's talk about choosing the right people or the right person to do this.
Usually I start by describing the job that they're going to have to take care of when you pass or during your life. The trustee, the successor trustee who takes over the administration of your trust when you pass, has to understand that their job is to gather up all the assets, be able to determine what your debts and expenses are, deal with the beneficiaries in a impartial way, and be able to distribute those assets in a timely fashion. Sometimes people like to pick kids to do that job, starting with the oldest. Well, if the oldest is out of the country or not necessarily there to be able to do this conveniently, then you might have problems there. Also, there's a conflict that might exist between kids because the younger ones or whoever it is that's getting a benefit from the trust might be pushing the older one to move faster and get things done quicker than the process allows. So, just bear in mind that that's something that you want to consider without having to just kind of throw it out there, pick an oldest down the line. The will is the same thing. You're asking someone as an executor to basically administer your will for you, and they're doing pretty much the same job as the trustee would be doing, only it's just transitioning the assets that still may be in your name when you pass into your trust. The power of attorney for financial matters, that's one in which you're appointing someone to make financial decisions while you're living. So that has to be someone that's close enough to you who can at least know what your bills and expenses are, write checks and things, and be able to be trustworthy to take over your assets. The biggest problem with this job is that a lot of folks get into it, and then there's a lot of mismanagement of assets during that period of time because there's not a lot of check and balances. And the healthcare power of attorney is really just dealing with the doctors and making sure healthcare decisions are made. And you want someone there that knows you, knows what your decisions would be, so they can carry those out for you. So it's not just something you just kind of throw out there, names you pick out of a hat. You really want to give it thought because each one of these jobs requires a certain type of person. Now you might know one person that can handle all of them, I don't know, but in the event of picking these different type of positions, know that these people have to be there, be able to handle this for you. And it is a part-time job for them too.
Right.
I mean, they're asked to be doing a lot, taking time out of their lives in order to take care of this.
And ideally, it's with the family members. I mean, ideally, if for a married couple, you've gotten you're naming each other, of course.
Yes.
So if you go through a period of incapacity, then spouse to spouse, you're able to manage the financial affairs much like you do now. All right, and then hopefully the children, and in some order or in some way that we're going to put that together. One of the things to consider with that, we're going to get into a number of, in fact, we're going to have to take a break, but once we come back from the break, we're going to delve into this a little bit more about choosing the right person, but also what happens if you don't have a person that you can, rely on to do this. Who would we have maybe as how would we handle that situation? What do we do then? We'll talk about that, but first a break. Join us here. We'll be right back on the Retirement Report.
The time has come to enjoy your golden years, but have you saved enough?